Our story begins with Solomon Northup receiving what can only be described as an extremely negative performance review from his new employers, which lands him in a rustic no-star resort known as a slave pen. There, he meets Clemens, the resident Yelp reviewer of the situation, who basically tells him to leave a one-star review and keep a low profile. Soon, family tragedy enters the picture as Eliza and her daughter join the party, completing a horribly broken family. Under the cover of darkness, they're chained up and herded onto a nightmare river cruise, packed into the hold with other passengers who did not book this trip. Aboard the steamboat from hell, Clemens doubles down on his pretend-you-can't-even-read-the-menu advice. They meet Robert, an ambitious fellow who wants to attempt a corporate mutiny and take over the ship. After a quick strategy session, they decide the odds aren't great and opt for caution. The evening takes a turn for the worst when a sailor decides to harass Eliza, and Robert's heroic but poorly planned attempt to intervene ends with him getting stabbed. Clemens and Solomon are tasked with body disposal, leading Clemens to grimly remark that Robert now has the best cabin. At the docks, Clemens's master appears, and Clemens, deleting his intellectual history faster than you can say servitude, runs into his master's embrace, leaving Solomon without his only friend. An overseer with the comically cruel name of Freeman starts calling the roll of his new property. When he calls out Platt, Solomon, understandably, doesn't answer, earning a slap for his confusion. Freeman's operation is like a low-rent used car dealership, complete with a forced bucket wash before showing off the merchandise. Inside, he gives his sales pitch to eager customers. A plantation owner, Ford, expresses interest in Solomon and Eliza. Eliza begs him to buy her children as well, but Freeman, firm on his MSRP for human beings, refuses to bundle. Ford, on a tight budget, can only afford 2, and Eliza is left screaming in a fit of grief that threatens to sour the deal. On Ford's plantation, we're introduced to a man who is the definition of a good boss in an inherently evil system, which is like being the nicest shark in the tank. Ford's wife suggests a good night's sleep will make Eliza forget her children, a masterpiece of oblivious cruelty. The foreman, Ty Beats, a man with the self-assurance of a pudding, tries to intimidate the slaves with a song. Defying Clemens's advice, Solomon presents Ford with a brilliant logistics plan, which impresses Ford and shames Ty Beats. As a reward, Ford gives Solomon a violin, essentially handing him back a reminder of his stolen life as a performance bonus. Meanwhile, Eliza is finally sold off because her audible grief was annoying Mrs. Ford. Ty Beats' petty revenge escalates until Solomon finally fights back and wins the brawl. Ford's supervisor, Chapin, intervenes, but not before Ty Beats gathers some friends for a lynching party. Chapin runs them off, but in a bizarre display of corporate punishment, he leaves Solomon hanging from a noose, barely balancing on his tiptoes as if in an extremely stressful ballet class. Hours later, Ford finally returns, cuts him down, and promptly decides to sell Solomon to protect him, shipping him off to a notorious plantation owner named Epps. The logic is baffling. To save Solomon from danger, Ford sells him into even greater danger.
Epps is a Bible-thumping tyrant who gives Django Unchained's Calvin Candy a run for his money in the scripture-twisting maniac department. The daily grind is picking cotton, with daily weigh-ins that end in whippings for underperformers. One slave, Patsy, excels, which draws Epps's predatory attention and his wife's jealousy. The dysfunction peaks when Mrs. Epps throws a crystal decanter at Patsy's face. What I wouldn't do at this point is what Solomon is later forced to consider: trust someone, specifically the white laborer, Armsby. Seeing the situation, I'd keep my money and my secret locked up tight. A desperate white man in that environment is as likely to betray you for pocket change as he is to breathe. Life on Epps's plantation is a series of horrors. Solomon tries to plan an escape, but the sight of a lynching breaks his spirit. He starts secretly collecting paper to write a letter, a tiny spark of hope. Later, he meets Armsby, a white laborer who seems sympathetic. Solomon decides to risk it all and trusts him to mail a letter north, paying him with all his money. Of course, Armsby betrays him immediately. Solomon, thinking fast, turns the story on Armsby, painting him as a liar and saving his own skin. He then burns the letter, watching his hopes turn to ash. What I found most interesting in the story was Eliza's earlier argument with Solomon. She correctly points out that Ford's kindness is meaningless because he is fully aware that Solomon is a free man, yet does nothing. It perfectly exposes the moral bankruptcy of the good slave owner, proving that complicity in evil is as damnable as active cruelty. It's a powerful moment that cuts through the delusion that there could be any decency within such a monstrous system. A turning point arrives with Bass, a hired Canadian carpenter with strong abolitionist views. He and Epps clash, and Solomon sees an opening. The situation with Patsy worsens terribly when she visits a neighboring plantation for soap, a luxury Mrs. Epps denies her. Epps, pushed to the brink by his wife's goading, orders Patsy whipped. Cowardly, he can't bring himself to do it and forces Solomon to do it at gunpoint. It's a scene of unspeakable brutality that ends with Epps taking over and whipping Patsy until she collapses. This movie was filmed on actual historical plantations in Louisiana, including one just a few miles from where the real Solomon Northup was enslaved, making the film's events all the more chilling. After that horror, Solomon approaches Bass, who believes his story and agrees to write and mail letters to Solomon's friends in Saratoga. Bass leaves, and Solomon is left in torturous silence, not knowing if hope is real or if he's been betrayed once more. Then one day, a carriage arrives. A sheriff calls for Platt, and Solomon steps forward. In the carriage is Mr. Parker, a friend from Saratoga. Solomon's liberation is swift and stunning. Epps screams empty threats as Solomon is led to safety. He shares one last heartbreaking embrace with Patsy before he leaves. He finally returns home, reuniting with his family, now 12 years older, including a grandson named after him. The title cards at the end inform us that while justice for his kidnappers failed, Northup became a powerful voice in the abolitionist movement, helping guide others to the freedom that was stolen from him for so long. Now, Bass risked his life to help Solomon, while Ford, who claimed to respect him, sold him deeper into slavery. Who do you believe was the more dangerous man to Solomon's soul? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you all loved the video. I'd seen this movie a long time ago and loved it, so I decided to bring it here to the channel. To let me know you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.
And I gotta tell you, it was perfect.